couple of weeks ago, we began to talk about free will, the significance of what free will means, how we're different than animals, that we are not just made up of instincts, but we actually are making decisions all the time. The decisions have to do with something called the neshama, the soul. The soul is the one that makes the decisions. We spoke also about the topic of if God knows the future, then does that not impair or limit our free will? And we explained why the two can coexist together. There can be previous knowledge over the future, and that does not necessarily dictate what is going to happen. We're still responsible for our actions, and even though God knows the future, that does not in any way interfere with our making the decisions. What we're going to cover today is related to free will. It's called kohot hanefesh. Because once we know that we're endowed with free will, that means that we have great responsibilities on our shoulders. And therefore we want to know, how do we go about in life making the right decisions? Who's to say right from wrong? We have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have those who are in between, who haven't made up their mind. There's pro-abortion, against abortion. Who's to say who's right? Unless you point to a Bible and say, oh, God said so, that's different. But if you leave out the Torah, if you leave out the Bible, who's to say that he's right and who's wrong? The Constitution is man-made, and anything that is man-made is subject to change. That is why we have amendments in this country. In Mexico, you don't even need amendments. You want to change the Constitution, you just have enough money. If you have enough money, you bribe, and you can get anything done to change the law, to get away with it, not having to go to jail. And you can go directly to the judge, by the way. You don't have to go through a lawyer. That's the way it works in some countries because it's corrupt. So it's a very important question. Once we understand that we have free will, then we're not an ordinary machine. We're not just an animal. If we were to simplify it and we were to explain what the human being is, if we were to ask what is a human being, we would say, well, so far we know that he is a neshama in a guf. He has a soul in a body. The body acts like a garment. It's enclosed in this body. That would be too simple. Because in reality, if we look at a car very much functions like a human being does. In a car, you also have a driver. The driver makes the decisions. He's the one that drives. And you have an engine, and you have pistons, and you have a spark plug, and you have the batteries, and you have the belts, right? And that is what drives the car. And you have the driver who makes the decision. But that is very simplistic, even though it's true that the human being does have a neshama, and does have hands and feet, and sinews and muscles and bones and blood, just like the car has fuel. Very, very similar. But that would be very simplistic. The reason why that is simplistic is because, just imagine, what would happen if a car were to drive without any input from the driver? No input whatsoever. At some point, what would happen? The car would skid, would get off the road, and if there's an embankment, if there is a gully, if there's no guardrails, the car would just fall at some point. And what would make it fall? The curvature of the road. In other words, if the driver does not hold on to the steering wheel, does not guide this car, eventually the car is going to lose control and it's going to fall down the canyon or wherever it is. The human being, obviously, has a lot more control than just a driver in a car. The human being is composed of many more factors than a car is. The human being is composed of something called kohot hanefesh that are continuously driving him. He's not as simple as a car that can easily, a human being can also easily take the wrong turn and make a mistake, but he has a lot more control. There's a lot more decisions. There's a lot more power going on in every step that the human being takes, because what we're dealing with is kohot hanefesh. Kohot hanefesh means in English the various forces that exist in the human being, and they are love, Love is something that you don't have in a car. Even though some people love their cars, right? Love, you know what love means? Love is something very powerful, very, very powerful, to love another individual. So a human being has something called love. He has, what else? He has truth. Truth, no truth. What else does he have? He has a conscience. He has the ability to be compassionate, to be kind. He has all these kohot nefesh that basically run his life. He has to make decisions all the time. Do I love? Do I not love? Do I feel bad for somebody or not? Do I help somebody or not? Decisions much more than just driving a car and leading the car. And these decisions can cost him a lot more than the car just falling off the road. But there's a lot of similarities. The car has to get to a destination, and so does the human being have to get to a certain destination in life. So it is important that he makes the right decisions, but I just wanted to show you that there's a big difference between the human being and the car, and that the car is much more simple. You just basically have to hold on to the wheels, to the driving, right, to the steering wheel, and hopefully you'll get where you're going, as long as you know where you're going. If you let go, that's when you're asking for trouble. But with the human being, it's not just a matter of letting go. There's constantly decisions to be made about various issues that have to do with kohot nefesh, with all these forces that we have in us that really belong to the neshama. I just gave you a few examples of positive kohot nefesh, like kindness, compassion, and love, and so forth, and truth and conscience. Then there's the bad ones, the negative ones. Jealousy, hatred. What else? Anybody can think of anything else? Competition, desire. What is that? Animosity. And what is that? Envy. Yeah, jealousy. And self-centeredness, enochiyut. And as you can see, all of a sudden this human being has these struggles. Because of what? Because of the kohot nefesh, because of all these forces in him. The rabbis tell us that you know who's in charge of this department? There's actually somebody in charge of them. And I'm going to introduce to you, if you've never heard the terms before, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. Right? You've heard those terms? The evil inclination and the good inclination. Nobody can figure out till today whether they're true angels or whether they're just forces that were put into the human body. But they're out there. They're forces to be reckoned with. They are constantly there until we die. A Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination that is pulling us in one direction, and a positive inclination that is pulling us in the other direction. And for those of you who were here a couple of weeks ago, we explained that struggle is necessary. Otherwise we would be robots. I mean, what are we here for? Once we understand that this world is just a corridor, we're only here temporary anyway, we're going to be here 70, 80 years, then what's going to happen? We're going to either succeed or fail in our mission. Now what happens if we succeed? We have a ticket to Olam Haba, to the world to come. In other words, this is where we prove ourselves, this is where we accomplish or we fail. And if everything would be easy, then it wouldn't be a trial. It wouldn't be, in other words, what's the use of going through life if everything is easy? Just give it to us directly. Why make us go through such a hard life of being born, growing up, getting married, having to pay bills, going through lawsuits, if they happen. Why work so hard? Obviously because there's an end to this. As I gave the example with a cow. Wouldn't it be just better to be a cow? Very simple life, very easy life. All you eat is grass. Wherever you go, you have it. Right? And you moo and moo and moo, and you go to sleep. And it's very simple. You don't have to worry about the latest fashion, what you're going to put on tomorrow. Just imagine. You don't have to pay any bills. There's no IRS. There's no audit. It's very simple. Does that make any sense that God should make the human being's life much more miserable, more difficult? I mean, He's the crown of creation. We all know that, right? We have so much control that the animals don't have. We are on top of everything else, the human being. We're not even talking about Jews and non-Jews, because everybody is a human being. Everybody's created in the image of God. Everybody's special. Everybody's here for a mission. Whatever that, we just happen to have a different mission. Everyone has a different mission. The Jewish people have their own mission, but everyone is special in some way. So this human being who's so special, who's the crown of creation, why should he have such a hard life? So what do we explain? Obviously because this is not the life This is not the main life. This is not the ikar. This is not the most important. This is just a corridor. We all are born, go through this, and we eventually go somewhere else. And that somewhere else is more important than here. But people forget, or they don't know, or they don't agree, or they don't admit it. And they think this is it. You only live once, so you might as well enjoy yourself. Have fun, eat all you can, because tomorrow you're gone. There's nothing else. Well, obviously, if you have that attitude, then you're not going to think about anything else. But you know why that's a dangerous attitude? Because if this is all that there is, you're not even going to fight that Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. That evil inclination is telling you to be jealous. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being jealous? Whoever said that jealousy was wrong? Is there anything wrong with jealousy? Can anybody tell me what's wrong with jealousy? I want to have what he has. I want to have a Mercedes-Benz, not me. Right? Somebody else. He wants to have that car. He's jealous. What's wrong with jealousy? The Torah tells us, don't covet what somebody else has. Be happy with what you have, right? The rabbis tell us, who is wealthy? Whoever is content with what he has. Well, why should he be? Why shouldn't he try to work harder and make $1 million, make it rich fast? You know how many books there are on how to make it rich fast in this country? There's a book about diets too. There's a book about anything you want. It's a big business, writing a book. You can write a book about anything you want, and it will sell. So anyway, nobody has any, there's no incentive, there's no reason to fight and to control yourself unless you have no choice. Where don't you have a choice? You can't speed because they're going to put you in jail, they're going to fine you, they're going to give you a ticket, they're going to force you to go to traffic school. You can't fight with your wife because you're going to get divorced, right? I mean, unless you want a divorce, right? You can't do certain things because you have no choice. But if you had a choice, you just be what you want to be. So there are laws in the land, thank God, that limit what we can do. There's fair company. There's even laws about competition. Remember Microsoft? Too bad you didn't have that case. That was a big money case, right? But they figured it pays for them to do all what they've been doing because they'll just spend the money and pay everybody off. So anyway, if one has no reason for fighting this Yetzer Hara, for controlling this Yetzer Hara, if he doesn't have a good reason, he's just going to, by default, there's something called a default. By default, he's going to just be self-centered. Nobody is by default everything that I mentioned before as far as kind, compassion. People do have interests. People, of course, some people are nicer than others, and I will explain that a little bit later, why that is so. But by default, Adam karov le'atzmo. The rabbis tell us, remember, the human being is biased. Because he's biased, Adam karov le'atzmo u'ohev et atzmo. He loves himself. And because he loves himself, guess what? He may not be making the right decisions. To succeed in life, you have to have you have to manage very well your Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov. But if you're close to yourself and you're biased, you won't see your own faults. How are you going to make your own decisions? How are you going to make the right decisions? So first of all, number one, the rabbis give us a little bit of an idea of what can help us make the right decision. First of all, the rabbis tell us the less materialistic you are, the better your chances are of being more spiritual. I mean, who is not as spiritual? Who is not as interested in himself, or who is more compassionate? One who is not as materialistic. Because if you are materialistic, then you want to enjoy life, you want to have everything in life. And if it means stepping on somebody else's foot, you may do that too. And that may lead to stealing, to cheating, to lying, and to committing more serious crimes. So number one, don't be so materialistic. Now that's very easy to say. How not to become materialistic, that's a whole different topic. But I'm just giving you the answer now. One way not to be very selfish is not to be so materialistic. The less you are materialistic, the easier it is for you to espouse, to adopt all these ideals of love and compassion and doing for others. Remember Mother Teresa? I don't think she was very materialistic. She was willing to live in poverty with all those poor Indians in India, in Calcutta, in the street. Completely selfless. She gave her life, actually, her entire life to helping others. It's impossible for her to have been materialistic. It's just incompatible. I mean, if you ever go to Calcutta, you know what I mean. I mean, it's terrible conditions there. She was willing to live with them and be understanding and patient. takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength. But more than that, it takes believing in what you're doing. She believed very much in what she was doing, and that's what gave her the strength. What helped her is not being so materialistic, but what really did it was that she believed in this idea, and it's a beautiful thing. This is what the rabbis would call, they would call her Hasidei Umot HaOlam. She's one of the righteous of the nations, and there are non-Jews out there who are very righteous for the deeds that they perform. So anyway, so what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to make the right decisions? So I just gave one example. If you're not as materialistic, it will be easier for you to focus on being nice and being kind and so forth. But one is biased, so one does not always see his faults. So therefore, the first thing one can do, if he wants to make the right decision, is to consult with others. You don't know if you're doing the right thing because you are nogea bedavar, you are biased. It's something that pertains to you. Can somebody be a judge over his own case? Right? I mean, a lawyer can defend himself. If he's the one in court, if he has to appear in court, he can defend himself, he can speak for himself, that's fine. And even then, many lawyers hire somebody else to defend them, right? But a judge, can a judge be? It's impossible. A judge cannot possibly be unbiased. It's just a fact. You're biased. If it relates to you, you are biased. And therefore, you're not going to do a good job making a decision. Therefore, what should you do? One idea is to ask others who are not biased, shelo nogim bedavar, who have nothing to do with the case, to tell you, is this the right thing to do or a wrong thing to do? Since a person is biased, by the way, even if he has a map, even if he thinks he knows what he's doing or where he's going, he may end up doing the right thing, taking the wrong road. Because a lot of people have asked me, how is it possible that some rabbis, some who are very observant and very religious individuals, committed a crime? Isn't that against the Torah? Aren't they religious? Have you heard that kind of argument? Mm-hmm. And the answer is very simple. Do you think only you have a Yetzer Hara, not the rabbi? I mean, everybody has the same Yetzer Hara. Sometimes one has a stronger than somebody else's, but we all have a Yetzer Hara. Just because we know what's right, in other words, we already know what's right, we already have the map, and the Torah is a map. It's giving you direction. Even so, people, because they're biased and they don't see clearly, they may interpret this to mean something else. They may justify what they're doing as being right. Why? Because they're biased. They don't see clearly. And a person has to remember this. If you're involved, be careful when you're making the decisions, because you may not be seeing things as clearly. Therefore, ask somebody else. Maybe you'll get a better perspective if you ask somebody else. Rabbis also tell us not to act hastily. As in, there's a saying in Arabic, al-ajal min ash-shaitan, haste, or pzizut as we call it in Hebrew, comes from the Satan. Wal sabr min ar-Rahman, and patience comes from Hashem. In other words, haste comes from the Satan. If you act in haste, you will make a mistake. You will do the wrong thing. You don't want to act in haste. You know what they say? I think in English they say,
Haste makes waste.
what was that? Haste makes waste. No, I learned a new one today. Haste makes waste. What about the one, better safe than sorry? Is that true? Is that the way it's said? Better safe than sorry? English is not my first language, so forgive me. Better safe than sorry. What does that mean? Just take it easy. Don't rush into it. Think about it. Think, ask. In Yiddish there's a saying, I'm not going to say it in Yiddish because I don't think you understand Yiddish. In Yiddish there's a saying, to ask the entire world. Ask everybody their opinion. You make your own decision. You make up your mind. But to ask, get opinions. What do you care? You're just going to become smarter. Now, we're not talking about just getting everybody's opinion because they're going to confuse you. We're talking about people who are knowledgeable, like doctors. Should I go through this operation or not? It's a major decision. It's a major operation. Things can go wrong. Ask 3 doctors, do I really need the operation? Maybe I don't need the operation. Maybe it's going to go away by itself. Maybe just exercise. Right? So major decision, you want to consult with several people. You have nothing to lose. You're just going to become smarter. Maybe somebody will point out something that you didn't see, that you didn't know. The rabbi Jose Lublin, as he was known, great rabbi who lived 200 years ago, said if you want to make the right decision, just take a moment out, in other words, stop for a moment, and ask yourself, wait a minute, who's giving me this advice? I'm about to do something, the Yetzer Hara or the Yetzer Tov? I'll give you a quick example. Let's say somebody comes and asks you for charity. Not everybody likes to part with their money. Some people are even stingy, right? So it's even harder for them to give money, right? So somebody comes and asks them for money. And they refuse at first. And somebody asks them, why did you refuse him? I don't really think he needs the money. How did you make that decision? You don't really think he needs the money. Well, based on what? Do you have information? Or you might say something else. You might tell the guy, you know what, come back tomorrow. Why are you telling him to come back tomorrow? Do you really don't have the time for him right now to take $1 out of your wallet? Are you so busy? Or are you just trying to push him off? Or really maybe you don't have the money right now and you want to give him a bigger check. A lot of times our initial reaction is not right. If we are reacting and we did not take the time to think about, it could be we just reacted because based on our Yetzer. Our Yetzer Hara told us, don't give him. He doesn't deserve it. Let him, as some people have done, very not nicely, they shut the door in the guy's face. Why don't you go get yourself a job instead of asking people for money? Wait a minute. Maybe the guy can't work. Maybe the guy has tried to work. Maybe he's not enough, even though he is working. Maybe his wife is pregnant right now and they have 10 children at home and they can't make ends meet. Have you thought about everything before you made that decision and closed the door on him? People react, and when you react quickly, you don't always make the right decision. You don't always say the right things. And then, to take back words, it's very hard because once the words have left your mouth, you maybe have insulted or hurted somebody's feelings. It's very hard to take back words. So careful with what you say. We're not always careful with what we say. We did say, however, that the neshama has an advantage. The soul of a human being has an advantage that by nature, it already has a program. When Hashem gave us the soul, He already gave us a program in the neshama to do the right things. Otherwise, how is one supposed to know? I mean, Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah. We open it up and we see what we need to do. But what about everyone else in the world, in Bangladesh or in Bhutan or in Indonesia, who does not have the Torah? How are they supposed to know what to do? If this is right or wrong. They don't have this book. They don't have a map. So the rabbis tell us in the Kabbalah, the neshama, intrinsically, I think that's the right word, by nature, it knows if something is right and is wrong, as long as it really, really analyzes the situation carefully. Because there's something called the conscience, the matzpun, in Hebrew we call it. And if you allow your neshama to express itself and not your bodily needs, then you will be able to discover what is right and what is wrong. Shabbat is for that purpose. What happens on Shabbat? We abstain from everything that is physical and material. We forget about our bills. We forget about everything that we do during the entire week. And we don't have to work, make a living. In other words, we stop everything. We abstain. Shabbat means to abstain. You rest, you eat, you spend time with your family. And then what happens? Your neshama, once a week, has the few moments to express itself. Why are you working so hard? Is that what life is all about? Just work, eat, sleep, go on vacation once a year, same cycle, retire, and then what? What did you accomplish? If a person just works and he would work on 7 days a week, he wouldn't think about it. He doesn't think, you don't stop to think, wait a minute, why am I working so hard? What is this for? Why do I need this for? Why is he rich and I'm poor? And why are people struggling? Why is there war? People don't think about these questions. Especially in today's generation where everything is fast food. They want the news right away on the internet. They click, they go on to the next page. They want to go on. Life is very fast-paced today. People have even less time to think about issues today than they had 50 years ago, when there was more family time, when the husband actually listened to his wife. Today, I want to read the newspaper now. I want to see my show, my favorite show. Or, give me my beer, I want to see the football game. What do you mean, the beer? What about me, the wife says. No, I want to see the football game. I'll talk to you later. You're wondering why a lot of relationships break down. Because people are really focused on themselves, have become more materialistic. They don't stop to think, and they make many mistakes. Teenagers make many mistakes today. They become addicted to drugs. They think, oh, this is cool, this is nice, this is... And they make a mistake. They don't consult, they don't think, they don't listen to their parents, you know. The father will tell them, listen, I tried it out myself too, not me, right? And it's not good for you. It's going to destroy you. But Daddy, you don't know what you're talking about. This is great stuff. You'll never be depressed if you take these things. You know? So anyway, people don't think. Anyway, so what happens is the neshama is pre-programmed, so it knows certain things if we allow her, if we give her a chance to express herself. Stop, think, wait a minute, what am I doing here? What am I living for? Rabbis nevertheless tell us, you know what? If you had a choice to be born, to be created or not, you would be better off not being created. Why? Because statistically, your chances of doing the wrong things are greater than doing the right things. Now that you were born and created, just be careful. But if you had a choice, you would have been better off not. Why? Because your Yetzer Hara is 13 years older than Yetzer Tov. What's Bar Mitzvah? Bar Mitzvah happens at 13 for a boy, at 12 for a girl. What does Bar Mitzvah represent? Bar Mitzvah is the time when the Yetzer Tov arrives. I'm here. He's not there before. The only one that's there before the time of birth is the Yetzer Hara. It may be new to you. Have you ever heard this about? No? You've never heard this before? The Yetzer Tov arrives at age 13. So who's older? The Yetzer Hara, 13 years. He's been around there for a while. Haven't you seen kids? I mean, kids, they're always wanting everything for themselves. They're always fighting with other kids. I mean, there are some adults who fight other adults too. Right? They're always kids. They never grow up. But kids, why are they selfish? Why do they want everything to themselves? Why are they fighting? Because they have a Yetzer Hara from their birth, from the very beginning. All they have is that impulse to want everything for themselves and something. The child does not have the ability until he's 13 to reason. That is why he does not become responsible, and he's not given the burden of mitzvot. Put on your tefillin, keep Shabbat until he's 13. All we do is educate him at 6, at 7, and 8 to say the blessings. We don't give him responsibilities until 13. Why? Because he does not have the ability to reason. Why doesn't he have the ability to reason and to compare and to analyze? Because he doesn't have the Yetzer Tov. He cannot weigh things. Let me hear what he has to say. Let me hear what he has to say. Right? All he has is the Yetzer Hara. So he does not have the ability to fully analyze the situation and to make the right decision. You were going to ask something? Yeah.
What about kids that are under 13 that are very generous, polite, sharing? There are kids that are like that.
Well, yeah, what did I say before? I was going to get to that. That there are some people that by nature are more inclined to be nicer, more giving, more compassionate. Yeah, there are some people like that. And it's a different topic. I think that will be in about, maybe next week even, we'll talk about that. What makes some people more one way or another? Why are some very stingy, some a little bit stingy, some not stingy at all?
I'm talking about kids that don't...
Kids, from the very start, from the very beginning. Yeah, what makes them so? Right? So it's a good question. Right? But overall, the Yetzer Hara is much more powerful than the Yetzer Tov. So why does a child become Bar Mitzvah 13 out of 10? Because he does not have the mental ability to... Imagine if you had a Yetzer Tov from the very beginning. He would go crazy. Who should I listen to? What should I do? What's right? He's not mature enough to make the decisions based on what each force or what each inclination is drawing him or telling him to do or pulling him. 13, Yetzer Tov... I mean, the Yetzer Tov might be there in minute amounts, but he's there completely at the age of 13 because that is when the child is able to reason and make decisions. So anyway, so this is the reason why by default the Yetzer Hara is more powerful than the Yetzer Tov. Yetzer Hara is also powerful in a different way. The reason why people make a lot of mistakes in life, the most major reason, is because the Yetzer Hara is known to be Meseach Da'ato Shel Adam. He's very good at distracting one. Distraction, temptations, and simply lying. Convincing you to do the wrong thing. Now, we need to remember that this is a necessity. This creation is important because otherwise there would be no reward or punishment. In other words, we are given the challenges, you fight off the Yetzer Hara, you win, you're rewarded. You don't win, you don't get the reward. So we need to have these opposite forces, otherwise life would not make any sense. Why do we have to go through this hard life, as I said before, unless there's some reward waiting for us if we do a good job? Otherwise, why make it so difficult for the man, much more than for the cow, for the ant, for all these animals that have it much easier than we do? Why should we have it so hard? Obviously, because this is not the main thing. There's something else that we're aiming for. And if we do everything properly, we did our job, then of course we're able to enter into the next life, which is what death is. Death is just a gateway between this life and the afterlife. Life does not cease to be completely, it just ceases to be the way we know it, where the body is left behind because the body is physical, and the neshama, which is spiritual, continues to live. So therefore, getting back to the Yetzer Hara makes it tough for us because he's expert in distracting us, in tempting us, and in simply in lying to us. That is why the rabbis tell us, if you see an individual committing a sin, it's only because Nichnesa bo ruach shtut, a spirit of folly has entered him. What's a spirit of folly? In other words, he did not think right for a moment, he did not analyze the situation, he was tempted, he was not smart. For a moment, let's say he's very smart, but for that moment he was not smart. He listened, he was tempted. Anybody can be tempted. If you have enough money, you can bribe almost anyone. You know what the difference between America and Mexico is? In Mexico, to bribe, all you need is 10 pesos. And here you might need $500. And if you don't give the right amount, you might go to jail for bribing the policeman. But believe me, you can bribe almost anyone. Almost anyone. It just takes more money. It might take $10,000 to bribe a judge here. Maybe 50? 100? No, I don't believe that. If you have enough money, you can bribe almost anyone. It would have to be a man of integrity, complete integrity, and religious perhaps, not to allow. Unless, of course, he's afraid of being caught. Well, that doesn't count, right? Let's say nobody would catch him. Let's say there was a way nobody could catch him. I'll deposit the money in New Caledonia bank account in some island, right? Nobody would ever know, right? People are afraid. But if there was no fear, of course they would take bribes. So anyway, we don't think enough, and because we're distracted or we're tempted, we make the mistake. That is why one rabbi said that the greatest mistake a Jew makes is that he forgets that he is a prince, that he has such an important mission, such great responsibilities. And the moment a Jew forgets that, he's no longer proud of himself, and therefore he can very easily lose himself. Oh, they don't like us in Germany, so maybe if we assimilate and be like them, they'll stop hating us. If a Jew is not proud of himself, then he won't fight for what he believes in, and he'll just let go of everything. That is what happened throughout history. There have been Hellenists, remember the Hellenists of the Hanukkah period, where the Jews were assimilated by the Greeks. They went to play gym with the Greeks, to the gym, to play, whatever, to learn their philosophy, to speak their language, because they felt, hey, let's become friends. And of course, that did not lead to positive results. Many of them moved away from their religion because of that. You cannot have the cake and eat it too. You cannot be Jewish and practice something else. They were uncomfortable, or they did not know how to deal well with the pressures. So if a Jew forgets who he is and what his responsibilities are, that he has a unique mission, then he's not going to be proud, and he's going to become weaker, and he's going to let go of his observance of the mitzvot. Another point that we said before is that if he does not have reason, if for him life does not have any significance, then why should he fight the Yetzer Hara? Why should somebody fight the Yetzer Hara? A person has a problem, he has a weakness. He gets angry very often. He's temperamental. Why should he control that? Only because maybe he wants to get along with people. Why should he become more charitable? You're going to tell him, well, you're not going to take the money with you anyway. That's not going to convince him. I just heard of somebody that left all his money to a dog hospital. You know how many people he could have helped, human beings? I know people who love animals are going to be upset at me. What do you mean? You animals are important too. Yeah, but not as important as human beings are. You left all your money to a dog hospital? I mean, you know how many people's lives you could have improved by leaving the money to some charitable cause that would have helped orphans, widows. I mean, I can think of many. All right, that was his decision. He was misguided. If a person does not value life, he does not think life is important, then he's not going to make the right decisions. He will not have any reason to fight his Yetzer, to change himself. And we all have many things that we need to change. So let's discuss a little bit of strategy now. How do we go about making the right decision, other than what I said before, other than asking others to give their opinion, and other than just thinking about the situation properly? There's something else that one needs to do. And the best example is somebody who has a problem with smoking. I like to use the example of a heavy smoker. How do you convince a heavy smoker to let go of his smoking? Anybody know? How do you convince him?
Tell him you're going to die.
Tell him to what?
You already know. Tell him you're going to die from it.
All right, that's the first thing they tell him. Aren't you afraid you're going to die from it? Okay, that doesn't work. Then they show him, the next step, they show him pictures, x-rays of his lungs. They actually show it to him. No more talking, they actually show him. You see? Look at your lungs. Black. That does not help him.
Make a law.
What do you do? What's the next step?
You make a law. Don't smoke in public. Whatever.
No, that's just for the public. I'm talking about an individual who agreed to come to the hospital, agreed to seek some help. His wife took him there. What's the next step? They try to treat him medically. There's things, instead of nicotine, there's patches and all these things, right, that help him medically get rid of this habit. What's the next step? You know what? Instead of smoking 2 packs, why don't you just smoke 1 pack? Yeah, you reduce the amount. But you know what all these things do? These 4 examples that I gave you, they maybe help him in the short term. They will not help him in the long term. He may always go back to it later. The only way you can help a person in the long term is for him to make a decision. Don't you care about your family? Don't you care about your kids? Don't you want to live for them? And if he does not say yes, then he will never be able to succeed in stopping to smoke. A person has to sometimes make a tough decision. I care about my family. I care about my kids. I want to live for them. And therefore, I'm going to have to compromise. I'm going to have to give up, even though it's very difficult for me. If you don't make that decision, then it's not going to work, no matter what you show him, no matter what you tell him. If a person does not want to help himself, then nobody can help him. You can guide him, you can show him, but if he does not say, yes, I want to myself, I'm interested in nothing, you can show him all the pictures in the world. You can show him that there's a Gehenom. You can show him, you can say anything you want. The lo yazor, it will not help him. So therefore, when it comes to making the right decisions, part of the making the right decisions involves controlling or conquering some of those weaknesses that we have, because they stand in the way. They will always stand in the way, whether it's being more charitable, whether it's being kind to others, whether it's just, almost anything that we do in life. If we have some weakness that we're not in control of it, it will not allow us to make the right decision. It will interfere, because we're biased, we like ourselves. So therefore, the first step of making one of the first things to making the right decision is taking complete control of yourself. I want to do the right thing. I'm really interested in doing the right thing. Whatever it takes. How many people are prepared to say that? I'm willing to do the right thing, whatever it takes. What is the right thing? Well, I have to find out. I don't know. But are you prepared to do the right thing? Yes. How come not everybody, therefore, is doing the right thing? So I have a surprise for you. The rabbis tell us, "Haemet kveda, v'lachen nosea muatim." Truth is very heavy. The right things, the true things, are very heavy. Not everybody is willing to carry it. Not everybody is willing to do the right thing, because sometimes it requires too much compromise. The truth is heavy. And not everybody wants to carry it. You understand what that means? Not everybody is willing to do it, even though they recognize it. It's too difficult. It requires too much compromise. You mean I have to give up my Shabbat? I used to go to the beach. A lot of Israelis tell me, when they were secular. I used to enjoy the beach. I used to go out with my friends and have a good time. You mean Shabbat, I have to stay home, I have to rest, I have to go to the synagogue. that means I'm depriving myself of all these things. But wait a minute, is this the right thing or the wrong thing? I mean, what is it? Do you admit it? Well, back then, there were no cars back then. There was no electricity. They start trying to figure out why today it's okay to do certain things on Shabbat. Back then they didn't have it. Anyone who tries to justify or explain, then you know why he's trying to do that, because he wants to have the cake and eat it too. He does not want the yoke of Torah and mitzvot. It's because it's limiting him, but it's not limiting you. It's actually presenting you with a gift called Shabbat. Shabbat is a day of rest. Try it out and you will see how beautiful it is. Don't think about your physical needs right now. Think about your neshama. Give it a chance to rest a little bit. No beach, no radio, no bills, no newspaper, no gossip, no nothing. No sports section, and definitely no business section. You don't want to see that your stock went down on Shabbat. Right? You don't want bad news on Shabbat. But some people don't. They just get the mail. What do they get in the mail? Now, if you're expecting a big check in the mail, I can see why you would be interested to see the mail on Shabbat. But what's most of the mail? Department of Water and Power, gas company, property tax. What are you going to look at the mail for? A magazine? I mean, there's other things to look at Shabbat. So we're always making decisions, right? And we're not always making the right decisions. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says something very nice on this week's parasha. In the area of relationships, there are some forbidden relationships in the Torah. Forbidden relationships. What's an example of a forbidden relationship? 1 second. What is that?
Karen shot.
No, a better one. What's a forbidden relationship? Let me give you an example. Let's say somebody divorced his wife. Can he marry his sister? Can he marry her sister? No. Not while his former wife is alive. It's an example of a forbidden relationship. Arayot. Another forbidden relationship is a nishanida, a woman during certain days of the month. It's forbidden, even though it's his wife, forbidden during those days. There are various relationships that are forbidden. But the rabbis tell us, but the human being very much craves these things. He wants the intimacy, he wants the affection, and he may have a difficult time following these rules of forbidden relationships. Now what? So the Torah says, Ani Hashem. Ani Hashem Elokechem, the Orach Chaim says, the moment God instructs us or commands us, it gives us the power to overcome the Yetzer. In other words, by nature, we have it very difficult because we crave certain things. We want certain things. But the moment we see that it's a commandment, the moment we see that these are the words of Hashem, Ani Hashem Elokechem, it means that He has given us the power to overcome it. Without that, it would be difficult. That is why the rabbis tell us, Gadola metzuveh ve'oseh mimisheno metzuveh ve'oseh. If somebody is commanded to do a mitzvah, and somebody is not commanded, let's say you have a Jew and a non-Jew. They both do the same mitzvah. Who's greater? The batteries are going down. Who's greater? The one who's commanded to do it and does it, or the one who's not commanded and still does it? Who do you think is greater?
The one who's not commanded and
I would think like you. I would think the one he's not commanded and he's doing it. The rabbi tells no, the one who's commanded is greater because he has a challenge. He was commanded. The guy who's not commanded doesn't have any challenges. He can do it or not do it as he pleases, depending on his mood. The one who's commanded always has a challenge, a greater challenge. Therefore he's greater. But because he has a challenge, he's been given the help, divine assistance, to be able to overcome any challenges. And that is why it's very important to remember that nobody can ever claim, God, you made me like this. You gave me these tchunot, you gave me these characteristics, and because of that, I am what I am. Nobody can excuse himself like that. You get upstairs, you cannot say, I was born like that. Like some people claim they're born with certain inclinations. They're born with certain inclinations. That does not excuse. You were born with certain inclinations, okay, but you were also given the strength to be able to overcome it. Now, how do we actually overcome it? So there are some guides that help us overcome any weakness. What are the guides? I like to call them guides. A good family, good surroundings, good friends, a good wife. All of these are, I think you would agree, they would help somebody overcome. If, in other words, even though by default we like ourselves, we have certain inclinations, if we are brought up in a good home, we have a good education, we have a good wife, you have good friends, that helps. What happens if somebody was not so lucky and did not have a good wife or good friends or did not grow up in a good family? What are his chances for becoming a better person? Can he still do it? The answer is yes. And that's a very interesting point. You know why the answer is yes? Because there's one thing you cannot change. There's one thing you cannot change. And that is your nature. Your nature you can never change, but you can control. When we control our anger, did we change it? No, we're just controlling it. You have a nature, you have certain characteristics that you were born with, you will never be able to remove them. They're there, but you can control them. What can you change? You can change your way of thinking, your perspective about life, your manners, your views. Why? Because where did you pick them up? Where does one pick up manners, views, and perspective about life? From books, from teachers, from parents. Those, therefore, are much more flexible. They were picked up. You can, therefore, change them. You were a communist yesterday, you can become a liberal today. What happened? I changed my mind. I heard a speech. Right? These are much more flexible. These are much more flexible. What's not so flexible is the innate nature that you have from birth, which we'll be talking about next week a little bit when we talk about astrology. These are things that you have, you're born with, and they pose a tremendous challenge for you. They are the challenge. Views? You can change your views. The big question was, remember about Yitzchak? Yitzchak married Rivka. Rivka? She was the daughter of idol worshippers. She grew up in a house of idol worshippers. Is that the kind of wife Yitzchak, Isaac, wants to marry? No problem. All she has are views. She can change her mind. She doesn't have to believe. The best proof that a person can change his mind or change his ways, his manners, his conduct, his perspective about life, the best proof for that is Balei Teshuvah. Those who have done Teshuvah, those who have made a U-turn, who a certain amount of years they've followed a certain way, certain lifestyle, did not eat kosher food, did not keep Shabbat, did not observe the holidays. You know what? I did not do this because I wasn't taught this, but now I understand that I should. Okay, what's involved? I got to change my kitchen? Okay, no big deal. I got to rest one day a week? Great. I wish it was 2 days a week. Right? Shabbat. Yeah, what do I get? Put on tefillin if you're a man every day? How long does that take? Make a blessing? What's a blessing? They say, thank you, God, for giving me food. Some people don't have food. Coming out of the bathroom and saying a blessing? Baruch Hashem, your kidneys are working. What's wrong with saying a blessing? You say thank you. You say thank you to the waiter. And you even said thank you to the policeman who wrote you a ticket. Yeah, don't we do that by nature? Okay, thanks, officer. Okay. We're just used to it. You said thank you to him, you can say thank you to Hashem. What's the big deal? So what big deal of being observant? Big deal. Oh, you have to fast a couple days a year? How many times we go out without food for a number of hours? What's the big deal? It's only the Yetzer Hara. It's only the Yetzer Hara who's distracting us. Now we've come to the biggest problem of all, and that is the people who want it easy. They want an easy life and they want to get rich fast. How do we deal with them? We have to remind them, right? One has to remind himself that there's such a thing as getting rich fast. Why not? Come back next week and I'll tell you why you can't get rich fast. Not everyone can. But let's talk about the individual who thinks. He's deluded. Ma oved etzlo koach hadimyon, imagination. He thinks he can. So there's a beautiful mashal that you may have heard, and I want to share it with you, that sheds a little bit more light as to why people make this mistake, the mistake that this individual made. And they waste their entire life investing in the wrong things, spending time where they should not, basically not having the right priorities. That's what it's all about, not having the right priorities. There was somebody who wanted to make it rich fast. His family was suffering. He wanted to earn a living. And he decided, you know what, I have an old map that I inherited from an uncle about some island out there where there's a lot of diamonds in this island. And it pays for me to go on this dangerous trip. It's going to take me a while till I come home, but at least I'll come home with something, able to support my family. Wait a second here. All right. At least I'll be able to support my family. So he sets out and he arrives at the island, and what does he see? Diamonds. He starts packing his bag, diamonds, and then the natives make fun of him. Why are you making fun of me? He says, this is worthless here. Diamonds? Worthless? Yeah, it's worthless. It's just stones, shiny stones. So tell me, what's important in this island? Potatoes. If you can grow potatoes and sell the potatoes, you'll make it rich. So he listens to them. He listens to them, and he starts packing bags of potatoes. The day finally comes, and he has to go home. And he gets on the boat, on the long ride back, and finally arrives, and who's waiting for him at the port? His wife and kids. They're all happy to see him. And they're, of course, retrieving his luggage, and all of a sudden, his wife asks him, tell me, what's in those bags that stinks? What do you mean, what's in the bag? So he opens up the bag, potatoes, rotten potatoes from all the way, the journey back home. The potatoes, spoiled. She says, this is what you worked for so hard, this is what you went for. What happened to all the diamonds? He says, what diamonds? And little by little he starts remembering that the original purpose of the trip was to get diamonds, and somehow he got distracted. The natives convinced him that it was potatoes. Potatoes are worthless here. There's enough potatoes there where he lives. Where are the diamonds? And he feels terrible. And everybody's so sad and disappointed. So anyway, he goes to sleep. He's tired from the trip. And his wife starts removing all the potatoes because they're rotten and smelling up the house. And as she's removing some of the potatoes, she finds a couple of diamonds at the very bottom of the bag. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, for the few diamonds that were there, they were able to live for a number of years. The moral of the story, of the mashal, is that we come into this world thinking, we're going to make it rich, but we're supposed to come down into this world to collect mitzvot, to collect diamonds. But we get distracted because the natives, people outside, tell us, no, mitzvot, diamonds, this is worthless here. You can't do anything with mitzvot. You gotta make dinero, mula, masari, whatever. Right? This is what counts. This is what has any value. Real estate. You want to make it rich? This is what you should be doing. Forget the mitzvot, Shabbat, tefillin, kosher. This is worthless. But these are diamonds. So you manage to put a few in your bag, but you start piling up the potatoes. All you come upstairs and it all stinks. The real estate up here, we don't need real estate. There's no need for real estate. There's no need for stocks. How about mutual funds? No, we don't need that either. We don't need that. We need the diamonds. We sent you to get diamonds. Thank God you got a couple from the bar mitzvah time. From 70 years ago when you were bar mitzvah, you put on tefillin one day, and you kept Shabbat one Shabbat, and you gave some tzedakah. There's a few diamonds that you have that you can live off of that. And everybody feels bad. The relatives upstairs, according to our tradition, when they see the soul coming, they feel bad. They know that he hasn't done what he was supposed to do. And the greatest Gehenom is the shame that one has. Just to finish, I just want to mention what the prophet Yeshayahu says. Yeshayahu tells us, Atem edai neum Hashem, you are my witnesses. In other words, the Jewish nation has certain responsibilities. And we are the witnesses that God created the world. We do so, and we give testimony when we observe the Shabbat. We do so when we wear a kippah. And the kippah is very popular today. Even the Pope has one. Yeah, I mean, they know what it means. It represents that we respect him, who's above us, and we are his emissaries. We're supposed to be a light into the nations. We did not always do a good job. That is why we were kicked out of Israel twice. The first temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. There's a lot being expected of us. If you ever wonder why the Jewish nation suffers, if you want it in just a couple words, because a lot is expected of us. And it's a lot more it's a lot deeper than what I just said, why the Jews have suffered so much. But in a few words, because he expects a lot of us. We've been given a responsibility, and we're still around, because he promised we will always be around. That is the greatest miracle of all, that we're still around. Everybody else disappeared. Right? The Greeks, the Babylonians, they're gone. I mean, the original empires. We're still around. But we should have been a couple billion like the Chinese. We're older than they are. But for all sorts of reasons, including assimilation, of course, our numbers have dwindled. Persecution is another reason. But we have an important mission, and we've forgotten. We did not do a good job. Therefore, just to summarize, when it comes to making important decisions in life, we're better off consulting with others who are more experienced, who are more knowledgeable, and that is why the rabbis advise us in Pirkei Avot, "Aseh lecha rab ukneh lecha chaver," make yourself a rabbi where you can ask halachic questions, and acquire yourself a friend. Why a friend? Because maybe perhaps if you acquire yourself a good friend that you can be open with, that you can speak your heart to him, that you would welcome his criticism. We don't welcome criticism from just anyone. In this way, you will have a better chance of observing what the Torah says. Because the whole idea of having a rabbi and acquiring a friend is not just for company. We want to do the right job. We want to make the right decisions. Have a rabbi if you have any doubts. Have a friend so that he can criticize you and you will accept his criticism. In this way, you will be safer in making the right decision, as long as, of course, you listen to them. When it comes to marriage, husband and wife fight. How are we going to do? What are we going to do? Who's right? Who's wrong? If the two agree, let's do what he wants, let's do what the Almighty wants. If they're prepared to do what the Torah says, then they'll never have any problems. The problem is, what did we say in the very beginning? Everybody's selfish. Everybody thinks of themselves first. And therefore, you take out the garbage. No, you take out the garbage. No, I got to do something else. Come on, what's the big deal? Right? But we don't think that way because we're so engrossed in ourselves. We're not trying to control our Yetzer. We're not trying to do battle with the Yetzer because maybe life is not so important to us. Maybe life doesn't have that much value that it's worth fighting. But for those that life has some value, that life is meaningful, then all these decisions of what we do and what we say can make a big difference. I just want to end with the pasuk that we read in Parshat Nitzavim. העדותי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך ברכה וקללה ובחרת בחיים. Towards the very, very end, Moshe Rabbeinu, right before he passes away, he says, I have given testimony before you, and this has been in the open. The heavens and earth has heard this, that you have the choice of life or death, of blessing or curse. And I advise you, ובחרת בחיים. Choose life. In other words, in life there are many decisions, there are many options. But unfortunately, some of these decisions and some of these options are very opposite. One is life and one is death. One is black and one is white. It's not like, would you like to have chocolate fudge or vanilla ice cream? Well, how about Napoleon? You know, that's easy. Okay, what's the big deal? You can have both. You can have one after the other. If you didn't like one, you can. Sometimes in life we can't do that. You have to make a decision, and it's either going to be right or wrong, and it could be a very expensive decision. So he advises us, "Ubacharta b'chaim," choose life. And choose life, that's a big word. What is life? First of all, value life. Don't look down at life. Some people just unplug the respirator from this person who's not doing too well in the hospital, because why should he suffer? Life is precious. Every moment that we're here has a lot of value, but we don't appreciate it. If we're alive, we're breathing. From the moment that we get up in the morning, we say, "Modani lefanecha," thank God that you gave us this life, this opportunity to do your will. We're obviously here for a reason, but we have to value it, we have to appreciate. Once we begin to appreciate life, then we will want to know why we're here, what is our purpose. Once you begin to ask questions, you're on the right road. If you don't ask any questions and you just go on living your life, you don't stop to think, then you're not going to always make the right decision. Unless you're a good soul, and we're going to get back to that next week, where some individuals are just by nature very kind and very sincere and very honest and very good, then obviously they're not going to be so materialistic. They're going to be more flexible. They're going to get along more with people. They're probably going to have a successful marriage, probably, even though they don't observe anything else. There are people that by nature are better than others. And we'll talk about that next week. I think it's next week, as to why certain signs, astrologically signs, give us certain inclinations, certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and what's that all about? Why is it so? That's a whole different topic. I just wanted to conclude, this concludes the series of the free will part. That let us not forget, we have a tremendous power. We're not animals. We have free will, meaning that we can make decisions, that even though we're one way, we can still control ourselves. We can still say no. We can still say yes. Nothing is to tell us, what to do. In other words, it's us making the decision. Nobody's going to force us to do one thing or another. We are always making the decision. There is an area where we don't make decisions. And that is how much money we make, who we marry. That is not always our decision. That is dictated from above. That is the subject of soulmates, which we will be discussing in a couple of weeks from now. How does one know who his soulmate from heaven is? It's not an arbitrary decision. This is also guided from above. Anyway, it requires a lot of thought. All these topics are not easy topics to digest. It takes time to digest all this information. But what's important about it is that we remember that we have a tremendous responsibility. And the more we are aware of these things, and the more we are careful with our decisions, the greater the chances will be that we'll have a more fulfilling life. B'ezrat Hashem.